Franz Kafka's name has become a symbol, an adjective, almost a mood that hangs over modern life. To say something is Kafkaesque is to say it is nightmarish, absurd, suffocating, and yet terrifyingly familiar. It means finding yourself trapped in a system you cannot understand, accused of crimes you cannot define, struggling against invisible forces that crush you with their indifference. But beyond the haunting images, Kafka himself was a man, a writer, and a thinker who gave shape to the anxieties of modern existence. His philosophy of alienation is not just a literary device, it is a mirror of the world we inhabit, and of the inner struggles that make us feel estranged not only from society but from ourselves. To understand Kafka is to look into that mirror and ask, why do we feel so alone in a world filled with people, rules, and promises of meaning? Kafka was born in Prague in 1883, into a German-speaking Jewish family at a time when identity was already fractured. His father was domineering, overbearing, and dismissive of young Franz's sensitivities. His mother was gentle but overshadowed. He grew up in a world that told him he was German in a Czech land, Jewish in a Christian land, frail in a society that valued strength, introverted in a world that rewarded confidence. From the beginning, Kafka's life carried the seeds of alienation, of not belonging, of being an outsider wherever he stood. This early tension between who he was and the role society demanded of him would shape not only his private struggles but also the vast landscapes of alienation in his stories. He worked as an insurance clerk, trapped in the bureaucracy that he so vividly described in his novels. Day after day, he dealt with endless files, regulations, and decisions that reduced human lives to statistics and paperwork. This job gave him financial stability but drained his spirit, just as modern office work still drains millions. He wrote in the evenings, often in secret, often filled with guilt, always under the shadow of illness. Tuberculosis would weaken him throughout his adult life, and his frail body became another reminder of his separation from the vitality of the world. For Kafka, alienation was not just philosophical, it was deeply personal, lived every day in his family, his job, his relationships, his health, and his inner battles. But it was through his writing that Kafka gave these experiences a universal shape. Consider the Metamorphosis. A young man, Gregor Samsa, wakes up one morning transformed into a monstrous insect. There is no explanation, no cause, no resolution. What matters is not why it happened but how everyone reacts. His family, once dependent on him, now recoils in horror. His father attacks him, his mother faints, his sister cares for him briefly before growing resentful. The man who once was a provider is now reduced to an object of disgust. Gregor dies alone, unwanted, as his family moves on with their lives. This story captures the essence of alienation, the horrifying possibility that our worth in society is conditional, that love can vanish when we are no longer useful, and that we may die unseen, unheard, unneeded. The nightmare is not the transformation into an insect, but the realization that this transformation only reveals how fragile and conditional human connections can be. In The Trial, we meet Joseph K., a man arrested without explanation, tried without charges, and ultimately condemned without ever knowing his crime. He spends his life trapped in an endless maze of bureaucrats, judges, and officials, all of whom insist he must be guilty of something but refuse to say what. He hires lawyers, seeks help, searches for meaning, but everything only leads him deeper into confusion. At the end, he is executed like an animal, still in the dark about why it happened. This is alienation distilled into its purest form, the terror of being crushed by forces we cannot understand, the helplessness of being caught in systems that are both absurd and omnipotent. In Joseph K., we see the modern human being, trapped in laws, rules, expectations, and judgments that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Alienation, for Kafka, was not just social. It was existential. He did not believe that life had a clear, reassuring meaning. Religion, which might have given him comfort, was distant and complicated. As a Jew in Europe, he was neither fully embraced by his tradition nor by the surrounding Christian culture. God, if he existed, was silent, unreachable, hidden behind the walls of bureaucratic heavens. His unfinished novel The Castle portrays a man who tries to gain access to a mysterious authority in a castle that governs the village. But no matter how hard he tries, no matter how many people he speaks to, he never reaches the castle. It is always out of reach, its laws and judgments unknowable. This is a profound image of the human condition. We yearn for meaning, for divine justice, for answers, but the answers are always withheld. We knock on the door, but the castle never opens. Yet, Kafka's alienation is not simply despair. It is revelation. By exposing the absurdity, by describing the nightmares, Kafka forces us to see the systems we live in. Bureaucracy, family roles, work, law, religion, even love, these are not neutral, they are cages that can confine as much as they support. Kafka teaches us that much of what we consider normal life is already alienating, already stripping away our individuality. His writing gives shape to the formless anxiety that many of us feel, the sense that we are always performing roles, following rules we don't understand, judged by standards we never agreed to, and separated from our authentic selves. In showing us the nightmare, Kafka invites us to ask, can we wake up? His personal letters and diaries reveal a man torn between desire and guilt. He longed for love and marriage but feared losing himself in family life. He wanted connection but recoiled from commitment. He wrote with startling honesty about his feelings of inadequacy, his terror of sex, his exhaustion with life. To read Kafka's journals is to witness a man dissecting his own alienation, page by page, night after night. He once described writing as a form of prayer, a way of surviving in a world where God was silent. Through writing, he found a voice, even if he often doubted its worth. Ironically, Kafka instructed his friend Max Brod to burn his manuscripts after his death. Brod ignored him, and the world gained the masterpieces that define modern literature. Without that act of disobedience, the philosophy of alienation might have remained hidden in ashes. Why does Kafka matter today? Because his nightmare is our reality. We live in a world where technology connects us but also isolates us. We scroll endlessly through images of other people's lives, feeling more disconnected from our own. We face systems, governments, corporations, algorithms that shape our choices without transparency, leaving us feeling powerless. We work jobs that drain our energy while questioning if our existence has meaning beyond productivity. The experience of being lost in bureaucracy, of being reduced to a number, of feeling small in the face of massive institutions, is more alive today than ever. Kafka's vision was prophetic. He saw the alienation of the 20th century, but we feel it even more deeply in the 21st. And yet, in Kafka's very act of writing, there is a subtle form of resistance. Though he depicts helplessness, he himself was not silent. Though he felt alienated, he transformed his alienation into words that connect with millions. Though he doubted his worth, his legacy proves the opposite. Kafka shows us that even in the face of absurdity, there is power in expression, in honesty, in naming the nightmare. To recognize alienation is the first step toward overcoming it. To describe the absurd is to refuse to be crushed by it. In the end, Kafka's philosophy of alienation is not just about despair, it is about truth. He does not comfort us with illusions, but he forces us to face reality as it is, uncertain, strange, often hostile. He reminds us that human existence is fragile, precarious, and that our search for meaning may never end. But he also shows us that there is dignity in the search itself, that even in a hostile universe, our voice can matter, our perspective can shine. Perhaps the true lesson of Kafka's nightmare is not that we are doomed to alienation, but that in confronting it honestly, we may find a deeper form of freedom, the freedom to see clearly, to speak truthfully, and to live authentically even when the world refuses to make sense. So, as we reflect on Franz Kafka's life and work, we are left with haunting images: a man turned into an insect, a trial without charges, a castle that never opens. These are not just stories, they are metaphors for our existence. We too wake up and feel alien in our own bodies. We too feel accused by voices we cannot name. We too long for meaning that remains just out of reach. Kafka gives us these images not to trap us but to awaken us, to make us realize that in this strangeness lies the essence of being human. We may be alienated, but we are not alone in our alienation. Kafka's words remind us that others have felt the same, that our nightmares are shared, and that in sharing them, we find connection. Kafka's nightmare is our nightmare. But by facing it, by naming it, we might just find a way to live within it, not with illusions, but with honesty, courage, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to look away.